Hello everyone, and I'm feeling slightly more perkier than I did in the last episode where I kept talking to a minimum. I'm going to try and keep talking to a minimum in this episode because I'm still not there yet. But it's a good enough day. I've got to take advantage of dry weather when we can get it because we're deep into November. So what we're going to do is ignition and a bit of the fuel system. Namely, a few of these bits and pieces. It can get rather fiddly, but there's a lot of things that you may need to know if you're doing this job on a Fiesta or Escort with a CVH of this age. Right, so we have an array of parts down here, and I'm just going to show you a few of them. We have here some new ethanol resistant fuel hoses. Okay, I'll just show you what we've got here. That is SAA J30R6. That is what is applicable for this because it's quite a low pressure system, but is ethanol resistant. We have a 6mm hose, a meter. So one of them, that is the return line. So we've got two lines. We've got one that goes from the pump back to the rail, and then the other section is at the back here by the tank. Okay, so we've got those two sections, so that's enough for that. This I'm hoping I've got enough for because we're going to need three sections. One, we're going to need, well, basically this is the 8mm hose, which goes to the pump, from the line to the pump, and then from the pump to the carb, and then we've got the one at the back of the car, obviously. So hopefully I've got enough there. I ordered a meter each. Not expensive, but not cheap. I'm afraid the cheap ones, you'll find that your car will burst into flames because the hoses have gone through in a few months. It's that bad. We're going to put the Dizzy back after just giving it a bit of a clean up and a bit of TLC. I love these genuine Ford HT leads. I'm going to see if they'll clean up any more than what they have done. I'll probably do that in situ. But we have got to take the cap off again because we're going to have to make sure that the car is actually timed to start for some ignition timing. That's really important, and I'll demonstrate that in a second. We've got some new hose clamps, just small ones. We've got some old ones that have come off, and I think I've got some else somewhere. We've got the new ignition coil, which will go straight on, and we have a Unipart fuel pump. So this is new old stock. This is the parts number, that GFP 169, and Unipart, remember them? Yeah, made in France. This is the new pump, and do you know what? I hope it lasts. It's been in the box for God knows how long, and it looks brand new. So let's get this on. Right, now just loosen the cap. Now we've got these screws here, which is really handy instead of nuts. So I'm just going to release the cap. Oh, come on. Oh, these are tight. There we go. It's quite handy. Just having normal screws instead of nuts, which you don't want to be dealing with nuts. You just want normal. These are captive screws, so they won't get lost. So there is a reason why we need to take this cap off. Just pop that off. Oh, pop that there. Just in our main feet. I have put the new Dizzy cap straight on, and we have the new rotor arm, so that will be very beneficial compared with looking at the old ones. Now, the reason that we're going to have to do that is if we look in relation to the actual the cap itself. Okay, so basically we have number one, which is over here. Okay, so number one is here. So we need the rotor arm to be pointing towards number one. Why is that? Well, basically, we've made a check. Now, the engine is in top dead center. I haven't moved it. Since I did the timing belt and put the cover back on, the engine is at top dead center. You may as well just whip it off and check, okay, to make sure it's all lined in. But I know it's lined in. It's up top dead center. I needed to do that anyway to get the last collet in for the valve stem, well, to put the rocker arm back on to compress the spring. Now, as you can see at the end, we've got the dog drive, okay? And that dog drive is perfectly straight. Now, what I'm going to do is just rotate this, okay? Now, that rotor arm is now pointing in the complete wrong direction because I've got it in the wrong direction. Number one was towards the front. So if I just turn that, there we go. Now what I'm doing is the static timing. It is really important that whenever you remove a distributor and you've messed about with it and it's which way do I put it back in, that dog drive, and it can go in two ways. You can put this in effectively 180 degrees out. Your timing will be way off because that rotor arm essentially sets the timing for the spark plugs. So how do you know which way is which? Is it that way or is it that way? Easy. You point the rotor arm towards number one, which is just over here. So number one is towards me, okay, on that cap. That should now point perfectly fine. So if we put it straight, yep, that's straight and that's straight. There you go, because that's the way it goes in. That will be pointing towards number one. That is your static timing. You make sure that the engine is at top dead center and you point the rotor on to number one. That is your static timing. We can now hook this on, put everything back on and start the car. It's as simple as that. When we start the car, the first thing we will do is the strobe timing. Static timing is good enough to get you started, but you need to time it on the strobe to get a minute actual reading of the ignition timing. Now, the one thing I have noticed before, obviously you've got this stamp in the block, right, of the distributor, and there is a mark on the block there. That is to get the correct ignition timing for this car in the factory. It was stamped in the factory, and that's what most of you will do. But I've got a strobe gun, and this car is never going to run on standard unleaded fuel, because remember, this car, this engine, the CVH, the lean burn version, was designed for unleaded fuel, and this ignition system was timed up for unleaded fuel. But we're not running on unleaded fuel no more. We're running on super unleaded fuel. Okay, we're not running on 95. This car will only run on super unleaded from now on. I'll run all my cars on super unleaded. It's a false economy going for standard fuel. You just burn for it quicker, and quite frankly, it's nice to know that some protection is being added to the engine while you're using it to clean everything up, make sure it's not gumming up your pump and everything, especially electric pumps in the tanks. So I'm just going to place that there, but we can advance the timing. We can advance the timing from 8 degrees to 10 degrees, and we will look at those marks down there when we're doing the strobe test. I think I might, because obviously the markings, I think the markings are on the top rocker cover or the bottom. I can't remember which one it was. I may be able to actually take the top cover off and see if I can get the strobe gun in. I need to see what I'm doing, because you need to point it at the actual fan belt. Well, sorry, not the fan belt, the timing mark, I should say. You need to point it at that place to see what's going on. So that's rather an important point, because you've got the mark on the crankshaft pulley, and you've got to see where that mark lines up against the actual ignition markings. Obviously, to do the timing belt, we had to line it up to 0, top dead center, but we're doing the timing, and naturally, as an engine accelerates, you get advanced timing. You need to advance the timing a bit more when it's running, that is. When it's not running and you're doing the timing belts, you need top dead center. That is how it's done. So I'm just going to take these 2 bolts out and pop it in. So just line it in. Should just slot in, because we are at top dead center. There we go, done. Yep, can't move that rotor arm. Brilliant, fantastic. Now all we need to do is just line these 2 marks together. You see those 2 marks? Right, line it up and clamp it there, and that will get us, well, it will get us the correct ignition timing that the engine had before I disassembled it. But as I say, I'm going to get the timing gun. If you didn't have a strobe gun, leave it. This is good enough. But if you did have a strobe gun, then I suggest you have a look at this. But I also argue that after wear and tear, particularly at the end where I mentioned about the bob weights wearing, I would say what was applicable from the factory, i.e. that mark, may not be applicable today because of wear and tear, and you have to account for that. So it depends how the engine, or how nice the engine runs, and I think that's quite important. Okay, it's just make sure the markings are like that again, and we can just tighten both. Honestly, you don't need to be intimidated. A lot of the people that watch me for the Ford Focus stuff, you know, ECUs, ignition, it's all done for you. You just need to bolt it back in. This is a car of an age where you needed to do it all yourself. Okay, there's no ECU that's going to get you out of jail. You do this wrong, the car won't even start. It won't run properly, it won't even start. To be honest, if you got this 180 out, you're not going to start the car. That's half the problem. If you've done this job and you've put that in and you put a load of stuff back in, won't start, it's because that's 180 degrees out, guys. Simple mistake and easy to correct. And all it takes is a few minutes, even to check. So just clamp both bolts in and move on to the next job. Right, so that's nicely in place. I'm just going to leave this cap over it because I think I could do with cleaning these HT leads a bit more. I'm not entirely happy, so I'll leave that there for the second. Right, now the next job, I'm just going to put the ignition coil back in. It's a relatively simple job. This is, I say simple, it's down here nice and tight. There is a way. We have the negative and the positive, so we're going to just place it in thus. Okay, so we just take these bolts out and gave up with the spanner. It's no good. You've got to have a deep socket to get to this bottom one. It looks easy, but I'll tell you, it's not easy at all. It's quite cramped in this corner, so you just got to make sure that it's kind of not sloppy on that one side. Just get them sort of equal, so the bolts are sort of sitting equally on one side. I'm just a bit of a fuddy-duddy for this sort of thing. Coil, I think it differs from the old one because the old one had the positive and the negative like that, whereas this one's slightly different. Doesn't really matter, it matches the parts numbers, it's new old stock, and I would trust anything old-fashioned Intermotor, Unipart, you name it, over the modern stuff. I'm a bit disappointed about Cambiari though. That's the first time I've seen a Cambiari product actually detonate. I've actually had quite a bit of luck with them. There we go, lovely. Oh, right, I've had to take it back off. That was quite frustrating. I've had to go back and refer to one of my old videos, and sadly I can't get a clear enough picture of which lead is which. Now I would assume that the black lead is the negative and the two wires are the positive. Yeah, I can't get them on. Well, I can't get the positive one on. And I'll tell you something that I've noticed on both of these coils is that the negative post is narrower than the fatter positive post. Well, if we look at these plugs, the positive, well, supposedly the positive cable is narrower, and the earth cable, well, that's fatter. Well, that's why that green cable wouldn't go on the positive one. I'm pretty damn sure that doesn't go on there. Oh, I'm stumped on that. Right, I'm gonna have to ask the question about that one. I'm sure one of you will actually comment, but the truth is, by the time you've commented, I'll have possibly tried to start this and discovered, oh, I've got no spark. Or I don't want to be frying the module. But it simply will not go on. I don't understand. And the thing is, the video where I showed you Ruby running, on that first introduction video, the reveal, I can't see which is which. I literally physically cannot see which is which lead, because the wheel brace was here and it's sort of covered in the shadow. All I can see is the coil just about and the king lead. So, I mean, for me, the way it's sitting like the negative is there, the positive is there. That's how it should sit. But that's how it was. This one was sitting, negative, positive, but the positive won't go on that one. It's too big. But the negative will go on that one. Oh, dearie me, I'm stumped on this one. Okay. I think I'm just going to hook it up and put it on naturally how it looks, because those plugs were designed to go on. It does make sense. These coils are exactly the same. So, okay, I need to be very wary about that. But if it doesn't start, I'll know why it doesn't start. But I cannot physically get that green plug to go on this. I mean, if I just do this here, right? So the black cable will go on fine. That's quite loose. But it will, because it's got the bigger connector, there you go. And the positive, oh, come on. There we go. Okay, that feels good, that does. But take them both off gently. Okay, now we do it how I thought it was supposed to go on. So negative on negative, bit loose. This one, I physically can't get it on there. So, okay, this is okay, this is a weird one. This is that one's the same as this. The terminals are the same size. The bigger one is the positive and the small one is the negative. It's the same on that. Okay, I think I'll just hook that on, put the leads on how they naturally go on, and just bear in mind this. Oh gosh, I wish I'd have recorded that properly now. And before anybody asks, no, I didn't record a piece where I actually took these wires off for the first time to test the original coil. So I'm going to just put them on naturally where they fit, because that should go on there. But it literally, and it simply doesn't. I'm actually pushing the coil out of its bracket. That doesn't feel right. So naturally, I'm doing that. Honestly, that's the way it fit. That goes on, and that goes on. That feels right to me. And if it feels right, it probably is. Oh, what a faffy bit. Anyway, so, coil in. Next job, mechanical pump. I did make a bit of a mistake. Actually, not the next job. I did make a mistake with that. It does sit like that. Sorry. It sits like that. That is to the carburetor. Excuse me. That, I believe, is the return. And that is the entrance. Right, okay. Now, I'm not getting under the car to do fuel hoses, guys, because I'm wearing half decent trousers here. I'm not in the mood for doing this. I know it's a dry day, but I can't be bothered. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start cutting this. Unfortunately, my hacksaw's broken. So I might need to, I'm going to do some measuring in a second. But mainly, I think I might have to put the pump on to do this. It is a faff because the pipes are here. So your return's there. I've had to move the pipes out of that bracket down there. See that bracket? I've just had to move the pipes out. So that's the from the tank, and that's return. I might have to do it with this being like this. If this breather hose moves, some people would say I've put too much stuff back, and I agree with you guys. I'm actually going to put the fuel pump in, and we'll start from there, because once I've got the fuel pump in, I can actually start measuring the hose properly. As a pain that is, I might have to take this back out in order to do this properly, because I don't want to overuse too much hose, especially the 8mm hose, which I may have enough for. 1 meter should cover it, but I can always get it wrong. But anyway, I'm not going to, this comes with a paper gasket, but I'm not going to put anything else down on this. I'm quite happy with how this is. Some people put silicone or maybe even Hylamar. Yeah, okay, I can understand that. Can we just move this carb trap out of the way? Thank you. So we just go straight in there. I'm just going to pop that on the side. And where's the pump gone? God, I forget it if my brain's not screwed on. I literally put it there and thought, oh, where is it? Right, okie dokie. So it goes in like this. Yeah, that is good spring pressure, that is. See, I think the reason that the original casting gave up on the Carburetor pump is possibly because somebody's done that. I don't know. I mean, it's difficult because the spring is pushing right back. That's why you've got to be careful. So what I would advise in this sort of circumstance is just do it very, very equally. Very equally. I've got so many of these old nuts, it's untrue. So there you go. See what I mean? If you do it too much on one side, it could cause the issue of a stretch fracture, but you've just got to be so careful. I have done things like that in the past, so it always pays to just do things as equally as possible. So again, screw that in. In fact, if I can do as much by hand as possible, that's all right. I'll get my ratchet spanner, but this is going in quite nicely. So you can see the strength in the casing here. Unfortunately, I can't be bothered to get my 13mm out the house, so my flare spanner that I have hanging around in my basket will do just one bit at a time. See, do 2 on that side, and then do probably 1, and then 1. That feels a bit more looser actually. There we go. Should start to equalise. Have a look at how much thread is left, and they look about equal to me. I think that's the trick to doing this sort of thing. Just don't rush. How easy is this, guys? For everyone like myself, electric fuel pumps in the tank. That dreaded day where the car's stuttering and refusing to rev over 2000. That's the biggest point of fuel pumps. I think they either stop working or they work, but they start stuttering over 2000 RPM when there's demand. And it's that day where you think, oh God, I've got to drop the tank and everything. Because most cars don't have an access hatch. This doesn't, and the Ford Focus does not. Why? Why? That Peugeot over there does. It has an access hatch to the fuel pump. Why they stopped doing it, I don't know. Maybe to put DIYers off, you know, because this is the day where, I'm not being funny, if you couldn't do this yourself, what can you do? I mean, it's 2 bolts, for God's sake. No, I have had to consult here, but basically that goes to the carb, and that definitely is the inlet, because there's an arrow pointing up to this. So that's the inlet to that, and that is the outlet. So this will go to the return line down there. Okay, so we need a section just so long, so probably about this long. Now my concern is, down there, it's an 8mm fitting. This looks like a 10mm. So this might be a bit of a squeeze for this, but we could try and expand it just slightly to get it over, and I think it will just go over, but it's a very tight one. But we can't have 10. We could have 10mm on one side and 10mm on the other. I mean, if I get the 10mm, the problem with 10mm is that I'm going to have to compress that with a hose clamp to actually do it. This is why it's important to get the sizes right. If I just push that out, see, that will go very nicely over there. Okay. But if I try and put that on the return, yeah, it's a bit slack. I might actually try a little bit of experimenting. No. This 8mm cannot go on that pipe. So I'm going to have to put the 8mm on that pipe and try and shove it over as best as possible. I'd rather prefer a tight connection than a loose connection. The hose clamps can only tighten so much, and what essentially you're doing, if you've got a hose like that big and you're crushing it, it's going to get deformed. It's not going to crush it evenly. It's going to sort of deform and sort of go into like an oval shape. That's not good under the bonnet. So don't do that. Please don't do that. That is really not good. So I am going to do some measuring. Just measure, cut, measure again. Just see if you get it right. Make sure it's not too long and not too short. Anyway, with my standing knife, 15 minutes later. Right, as I say, I forgot I had one of these, so I've cut the hose, and I've just I put the hose down there. As you can see, we've got a brand new hose clip at the bottom, so that fits nicely. This bit is going to be the faffy bit. The hose clips I bought were too small. They were tiny hose clips, and I needed slightly bigger ones, but I think I've got enough of these, because I actually don't use these for any other cars. These are for really old cars, to be fair. These hose clamps for carburetor cars, for lower pressure systems. This is going to be the difficult bit, trying to get this over. I might just put some silicone on this to make sure nothing happens. God, that's really tight. Now, I'll tell you what, that put up some fight. I've now tightened it. As you can see, I think I've gone the full whack. Yeah, I'm not entirely happy with how it's extremely tight, really tight to get on, and that'll be fun to try and get off in the future. But the truth is, with these fuel pipes, that is a nice tight connection, and I've managed to push it as far down as I possibly can. So it's not ideal, but you can't have a 10mm hose on one side and an 8mm on the other. I don't know any manufacturer that does two different diameter ends to a hose. That would be an expensive operation. So you just got to sort of compromise with that with clamps, but that's well clamped now. And now I've just got to clamp the rest of it down there, but that's one done. This one I will not do to the carburetors in place, but we can do the other one. Right, cut that, but I've only got one more of these. I have got some more in spare, but I'm going to have to order the correct size because the ones I've ordered are too small. 12 to 14 millimeters. These are on the big size, so I'm going to go for 10 to 12s, and that should do me. I'll get a load of them. So I'll add that to the list, but we can stick this on. I'll probably just hook that on if I can, just squeeze it on. Oh, for goodness sake, just give it a twist, Andrew. It's always the way, it's never at the correct size. Right, obviously it has to go on this one, but we're going to put it on the bottom end. We're just going to shove it on the pipe itself. What I'm going to do is I'm going to angle these, because they're 8mm nuts, these are. You can angle it that way, so in the future I just have to get a socket from this end. That's the whole idea. Just had to put some silicone spray to get that pipe on. I can't really show you guys because, as you can see, it just get really like tangled up. This is the problem with old cars, there's cables going everywhere for anything. But I'm just going to slot this onto the inlet, and it should slot. There we go, that slots very nice. In fact, the length is absolutely perfect. That's not too short either. I've got it slap bang on. I don't really care because I'm going to put a hose clamp on that, but that's another hose done in there. Just need to tighten that back up and put those pipes back in. Ooh, get in there. Oh, so got those two hoses down there. I don't know, just push them into the brackets. Come on. Why won't they go into the brackets? Oh, do you know what? I'm giving up with that. That's an absolute pain. It's the worst job on this car, those fuel pipes. Oh, Jesus. I'm going to push them into the brackets, and that's that. I can't do anything too much. I don't want to be measuring up a hose for that until we got the carb on. So that might well be the next job. Shall we? Right, this rebuilt monster of a Weber. Well, it's not a monster, but it's a complicated one. It's not the easiest one to rebuild. No, I've just taken the studs off, and it's as simple as doing that. There we go. That's how easy it is. Now it's looking like an engine. Now I've just got to make sure that nothing else is, nothing's interfering. We can put it straight on. Okay, we're going to have to rearrange a lot of this at the back. But anyway, what we have down the back here, we've got to find a lead. Well, first of all, I just want to get the whole thing bolted in with 4 10mm nuts. So do a couple at a time. Don't drop them down the engine. You've got to be so careful not to drop that one and that one down there, trust me. Trying to get this spanner in. And just try and make sure it's tight, Andrew. Again, just nip it up nice and tight. We don't want air leaks. Lovely. Now that's done, I'm going to call it today because it's getting windy. We are due for rain any second as per usual, and every single video I do it tends to rain. I'm going to leave the Dizzy cap off because I've got some cleaning to do with those HTDs. I'm not completely happy with them considering how everything else has gone back on. It just looks amazing, absolutely amazing. I will plumb the carburetor in properly in the next episode, where hopefully I can sort the hoses out completely. I just need to actually, what I will do actually now is I'll get some more of that, so it's not 10mm, it's 8mm hose, and just do a short run there. It's going to be a bit of a bend that, but I'll cut some and shove it on as a last thing today. So at least I know it's done, just need the hose clamps. I'll order some. I've just got the throttle cable and the choke. The choke will go all the way around. So we'll start putting all the brackets and stuff back on in the next episode. That'll be interesting, but this has been completely rebuilt. It looks the bee's knees. This looks great, this looks great, this looks great. It's just, you go back to like 2 episodes ago, look how much I've put on the car. This is not necessarily how easy the car is to rebuild. I've got to say it's a very delightful car to work with. They were just made for quick servicing. You take it in, you have all your servicing. You could do an oil change, check the timing, do a carburetor check with the just a general enrichment check, just to make sure that it's got all the settings, all the settings are correct. You could do a basic service in about an hour on this car under the bonnet. It's literally that good. You could have one of these back in the day. You could have one of them run into the garage, running like an absolute pig and dog, and then after some tweaks, new spark plugs, a bit of a tweak here, a tweak to the ignition timing, and the car would be running like a different car. It's literally from that age and generation. I love it. I love this car. It's a proper, like, just renaissance of what I was doing with the P6, but in a slightly different context. Just more experience and less snapping bolts and being overzealous with my spanners. So I'm going to leave you here, guys, and I'll see you in the next episode where we start plumbing more things in. Take care. And once again, for every single one of my subscribers, thank you for supporting me. It's been a tough few months. I think I'm undergoing some sort of YouTube midlife crisis where I've got 1,000 subs, I'm earning, and I'm continuing to do the same things that I've been doing since I started, a bit with some tweaks. And then I'm starting to feel a bit less enthusiastic about some of the videos I'm making. I'm not quite sure why. Maybe it's just because I want to make my videos better. And without finances, i.e. money to buy a GoPro, a better laptop, yeah, these are things that make a YouTuber what it is. The content is fine. It's just sometimes you need something just added just to get more people watching your videos, because these videos I think deserve to be watched a little bit more than what they are. But that's every YouTuber's problem, that is. Anyway, I just do it for fun. You take care. See you very soon.